Rory, thanks so much for making some time. I really appreciate it over the holidays here, and I love that you've got the Christmas tree there in the back.
Yeah, man. Gotta make sure everyone knows I have my holiday spirit still. So I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to chat.
Fantastic. So uh, we're going to be talking about big topic. I know that you were recently speaking in Singapore. Was it Singapore?
Doc, close enough.
Bangkok?
Yeah,
Pretty
yeah.
close. Maybe next trip. For those that don't know you, give yourself a quick introduction of who you are and how you got here.
Cool. Yeah, man. My name is Rory Flynn. I am the founder of Systematiq AI, business that I wasn't necessarily expecting to start, just came with the flow of things, of how everything's been transpiring over the last year or so. But essentially, at the core of it, we help businesses solve operational problems with AI tools. That's literally, if I was going to bake it down to the most diluted form, that's what we're doing. So, focus a lot of what we do around, marketers and marketing agencies and things like that. Just a lot of common problems that we've all been facing over the years. It's just these tools, you wish you had them 10 years ago. Great that we have them now. So how can we leverage this to create more time, amplify productivity, and essentially just better ROI?
Amazing. Welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here. And I'm excited. I know we had a short conversation before this, and I wanted to come back to this story you were telling about some of the big wins you experienced with your agency and the kind of challenges that you ran into and how you solved those.
Yeah, man. That's where it started, right? We were interesting situation. My partner and I ran an email marketing agency for a number of years. We ended up getting acquired, right? We ended up getting acquired by a larger e-commerce agency that was doing a number of different things, outside of the realm of email marketing. But primarily, we were doing email marketing for 90 plus clients. That comes just a ridiculous load. If anyone's worked in the email marketing space before, they know how much, time and bandwidth goes into even creating content for one account, regardless of 90. So, on average, we were probably doing about 9 to 10, maybe 12 emails per month per client. So we have 90 clients, around 900 emails per month. Now, that, again, trying to get that out the door, regardless of not having revisions or back and forth between client and agency there, that could end up being anywhere from 900 to 2,000 emails we had to get out the door each month. And for us, we didn't necessarily have the ability to continuously add designers, add creatives to the team, because it just starts to eat into your margins so much, then you're just like growing to grow. Right. Like we could have 100 clients, but if we had to keep hiring people, I'm not saying don't hire people. I'm just saying for us to scale and actually stay profitable, we need to figure out how to trim that number down and that time down to really give us a better opportunity to succeed. So it was one of those things where it started with one problem, right? We looked in the agency. It was like, how do we solve this problem? And typically what we were dealing with, like when we looked at the variables, our agency, a lot of clients were fairly new, mostly working in the e-commerce space, limited brand assets to go around. So when you start to get to month 2, 3, 4, you're running through all the high ticket assets that you have that are good. You start putting the same photos and emails and things again. It's same brand photography, but it might not make sense with the message, right? It would be, maybe we're sending something about one of our clients, their active ingredient was avocado oil, but we didn't have any images of avocado oil. So we're just posting like a product photography, every single time in the email. Now, can you get away with that? Sure. But if we had more assets to play with, it's just much easier to tailor the message a little bit, to actually speak to the audience in a way that makes sense. Because for us, right, like when I break it like down to the core, an email is a medium. You can't necessarily sell on email. You can't just click buy on the email and everything works. You have to go back to the website, right? So it's really taking someone from email to website. How do we do that in a very consolidated fashion, but also tell a really nice story visually? And that was where Midjourney, we started using tools like that to get over the hump, right? That was really where this one piece we noticed played a major role in kind of everything we were doing. So instead of just having our designers sit there and tinker with photos and Photoshop them and reuse like the same things over and over again, we're able to develop at a much quicker rate because we could just plug prompts into Midjourney, keep them on brand with the colors, the aesthetic, the look, the feel, and then actually be able to leverage that because it was a perfect format for it at the time. We started doing this probably like February, March of last year. And email, or some of this year, not last year, but email, again, when you think about the medium
Yeah,
itself,
we still haven't switched over to 2024 yet.
I'm like already there. My mind's already in 2024, but so it's a perfect format for it, where at the time upscaling wasn't as easy with the AI tools. So we had emails a smaller format, probably 70-80% of it's viewed on mobile anyway. Worked well with the size of the format that was available. And then also when you think about it, I'm probably sure you, Mark, you're probably not going back into your promotional inbox from 2 months ago and checking emails that people were like, you want to buy my stuff? It has a very short lifespan. So it was good for this. It was good for testing. But we started to see immediate contributions. So things like click-through rate went way, way up. We started to see about 0.3% increase. If from anyone on the marketing side, 0.3% click-through rate increase is pretty substantial, especially when you're sending to, a larger volume or a larger quantity of people. So it was really telling that this stuff was working because we were able to give like a new identity to some of the brands that we were working with. But that was just one piece, right? Then you start to get hooked. Like, okay, cool. We optimized one thing. Where else can we optimize? But looking at the operations, and not to be too long-winded here, I just think a lot of people have very similar problems, especially in the agency space. We were falling behind on a lot of clients. And as we grew, again, like I said, we couldn't hire at the rate that we needed to consistently keep up with the new volume that we had. It was like, where are we finding the most issues? And it seemed to be after we did like a really thorough operational audit, that revisions were what was killing us. I'm sure if anyone's, here listening in the agency side of things, revisions and just approvals, they're like the death of the client agency relationship. So one project turns into 3 or 4 essentially, because you're going back and forth. Can you change the color here? Can you move this here? Can you do this? Especially with email, right? Specifically, you want to change the text on an email, that might have to reshift the entire structure of the image graphically. So that just takes time. If we were doing 900 emails a month, we were averaging around 3.7 revisions. We're talking 2,700 emails a month that we had to do essentially or work on. So it was just a time factor. So that being said, really where we started to dig in was, if we're going to eliminate the revisions, like where does that all start? What is the disconnect? We found out a lot of it was not the design work itself. It was really what was going on with the copy. The copy wasn't necessarily up to par. There was a lot of revisions there, but that again plays down into the designer's domain. They have to then go readjust everything. But looking back in the sequence of how we got there, it was really, okay, what's going on? And we looked at the copywriters and it was like, okay, are the copywriters really doing a bad job? I didn't think they were, because we'd never had any problems with the copywriters before that. They were just overworked. But what we found out at the end of the day was the briefs that they were getting from our account management team. So typical structure here, right? Client talks to the account manager, takes all the information, synthesizes it, builds the strategy, builds the plan, sends it to the copywriter. Copywriters write the emails. Then they send that to the designer to sign the emails. We send it back to the client. That's how the whole thing works, right? Now, so we're working backwards, right? It was like designers, and we got the copywriters. And okay, what's going on with the copywriters? Figured out again, they weren't getting adequate briefs. So essentially it was like telling an artist to just paint. Hey, can you just go paint a picture? What do you want me to paint? What do you want? Do you want this to be an oil painting? Do you want this to be graffiti? What do you want? So essentially we worked it again backwards into the account managers. The account managers were just so slammed for time because they had to do, typically we were looking at them, they had to do 8 to 10 clients on average. That was typically where their range sat. And every month they have to create a content calendar for the next month. So that would take them anywhere from 2 to 4 hours to come up with that entire strategy. And then you extrapolate that out. It's over a couple clients. We're walking like 20, 30 hours a week for them. That's 1 week out of the year, or 1 week out of the month that they're just spending on content calendars. Essentially, that part kept getting diluted down to the point where there wasn't enough information for the copywriters. So what we really did there was, okay, how do we fix this? Can we use tools like ChatGPT to actually go through data and then build strategy in tandem with our account manager, or at least get 70% of the work done so they could fill in the rest and just trim that variable down so they could then deliver better copy briefs to the copywriters, which we inevitably ended up having ChatGPT write. So they're fully professional copy briefs, extremely direct, extremely detailed. We could trim this entire revision process down. At the end of the day, really long story, we trimmed it from about 3.7 down to like around 1.7, 2.1 on average revisions per email. We were able to trim almost a third or 2/3 of the workload down.
That's great.
Yeah. It was operationally, which is why I say we're an operational AI company. Like it's AI at the heart of it to amplify creative and productivity, but really it helps operations. That's what, at the end of the day, I think most agencies fail is they can never get the operations sound enough to be profitable enough to keep clients long enough. Agency world, we're solving for how do we keep clients longer? I think that's everyone. You're never going to make your profit margins having a client for 1 or 2 months. You want to have them for a year, 2 years, 3 years. That's where it all starts to, stack. And that's how you build that LTV. But that was initially, again, we had to figure that out because it helped not only with the work, but I think the intangibles were really exciting, which was our team wasn't as slammed, like just from a day-to-day, get things out the door. So it wasn't just check the box anymore. It was, we have time to actually now talk to our clients and like strategize with them, be a little bit more collaborative. So we freed up some of the robot tasks and let the robots do that. And then we were able to take it and really be more creative, be more strategic, have more communication so that our clients then had a better relationship with us. So again, there's the tangible aspects of it, which was the time saved, right? Like the time saved, the productivity, the differences in click-through rates and things like that. And there was the intangible side, which was just us being able to make our team a little bit happier and less overwhelmed, but having better relationships with the clients too, so we could just be more holistic in the whole approach. So really long story, but again, you can see
a great way to start.
Yeah, you can see how everything intricately plays into one another. So that's just one. That's just one example of it. There's so many different tools now. It's insane.
It's a great example of the exponential time savings you can achieve when you apply a simple solution to something that, operationally does have a ripple effect across some of these processes you're working on. Thanks for sharing. I'm curious what you're excited about moving into this coming year.
Yeah, there's a lot. Midjourney, that is my bread and butter. That's where this whole thing started. People aren't familiar with that. It's an image generator. It's super powerful. It's like the mid-tier between your Dolly and your Stable Diffusion. So it does a lot of things really well, and it's really good for just assets that you need to create. It doesn't have to be full production, is what I say all the time. You don't have to go in there and you're going to create an infographic. Midjourney is not going to create the entire infographic, but can you take 80% of the workload off yourself? Yes. So I'm excited now because I feel like we've been in this transition, right? And it's not just for me what I'm excited about. I'm excited about like everybody coming to this realization. I feel like we've been here in stages, right? Like people found the tools and there's this little adoption period where it's like, ooh, these are cool. What can I do with it? Then there's the more so of the, okay, I'm going to start to use this in my day-to-day life stage. Like I'm going to start using this in my job. I'm going to start using this at home. I'm going to start using this for different tasks, right? Everyone's doing it on a personal level. I think where we're starting to move now is this organizational level where everyone is essentially using it, but they're all in their own siphoned little environments. Maybe you're using it, your coworker's using it. We're all using it in different ways. There's nothing been systematized yet. Like stage after that is where I think a lot of businesses are going to get to next year. Is the systemization of it, where like we start to build SOPs around the tools so everyone's using it in a uniform fashion. So we start to get the product, the production and the results much quicker before we get to things like custom training models, where we just train the model specifically for the business based on the system and the output that they need. So I'm excited to have everyone move from this fun period of this is all cool and new to we can really start to make a lot of great things happen with the tools and the systems that we can build with everything that's available to us. So that sounds nerdy and I don't know, techie in a sense, but I'm really excited about that progression happening and just seeing what businesses are able to do with it, because these tools have never been accessible to small, medium business before. You'd have to pay insane amounts of money to get this kind of work done or use these kind of tools. So it's just wild that this happened in the course of a year. There's all this stuff. And it's like 10x the speed of what your iPhone release would be. It's like iPhone 14 to iPhone 15. It's, the camera changed and there's a new operating system. This happens like every 2 weeks. There's like that level of jump. So I don't even know how to predict what comes next, but I'm just excited about it.
I can feel the excitement coming through.
Yeah, it's insane, man.
I'm equally as excited about what's coming. And to your point, I feel like there's going to be a huge shift continuing to happen in waves, right? And the technology's here, but it's not as much as it's equally distributed, it's only the companies and the people leaning into using it regularly that can connect the dots, right? There's so many people I
100%.
have a conversation with, and they may use it here or there, but that's not going to give you a light bulb moment of how you could connect it to Excel and then use Zapier to automate, basically be the glue to some of these disparate systems. I'm interested in seeing how businesses take advantage of it. And to your point, this rollout idea of how does the team access it and keep privacy concerns and all of that in check. Yeah, it's an exciting time for sure. I'm curious, going into Midjourney a bit more, how has the process in using the tool evolved over the last year for you or your team?
It's been crazy, right? The overall aesthetic has changed so much on there. It's just such a high quality tool. And then now the use of like upscalers and things like that, you can really get crisp results. So like when we were doing it, majority of the time, because I was so deep in the tool, I knew like the limitations, right? Of what you can do, what you can't do, how to get creative around it. And I think that's probably at the heart of every tool right now. And exactly to your point before, you really have to know the tools and what's out there to be creative within building the system. But for example, Midjourney, for that avocado oil example that we were talking about before, back then, I would just use it as something like super minimalistic in the brand colors, just like a bottle of oil and an avocado. It makes sense. It tells a story, right? Like you don't have to get overly creative there. Just build the picture in your consumer's head. Now,
Mm-hmm.
where we're going now is it's way more powerful in that sense. Like project's been working on with its team at Superside. If people aren't familiar with them, they're a major design firm. They're international. They have somewhere around like 1,000 employees, but they are super talented at using these tools. So what we've been doing is, especially for, again, we're talking about brands that are maybe just starting out or brands that are, multinational, been able to take their assets and essentially build infinite assets off one singular asset. So when I say that, what I mean is really, if you think about, you have a brand set, right? Like let's say you have 100 lifestyle images, right? There's obviously, if you have a very strong brand identity, I think of something like Red Bull, right? Like their imagery is super, super unique. It's a high action, unique composition, very definite color scheme, things like that. So we're able to take like an image or two like that and then break it into visual building blocks or like text building blocks, if you want to call it that. So maybe it's 8 different elements, like the composition, shot type, style, camera angles, camera lenses, things like that. So once we're able to essentially take that one image, break it into the visual building blocks, we can rebuild thousands of images off that in the same brand look and feel. So now, instead of just doing, if you think about a common problem, like getting a photo shoot done, it takes time. Oftentimes it's really ambiguous based on the photographer. Brands I've worked with in the past, and this is maybe just my own biased opinion, don't necessarily know how to run photo shoots if they're not used to running them consistently. So you never get what you want. There's reshoots, there's editing time. So this could be a 2-3 month process. We could do this in 1 hour, right? We can turn one image into 1,000. And then for things like you're running paid media, as an example, let's just say you're running paid media on Facebook. Typically the game is you need a lot of assets to test, a lot of assets to just essentially give yourself more. With the guys that are media buying, girls that are media buying, they're like day trading, right? It's like this image works, this doesn't. This image works, this doesn't. So let's just shut those down and put our money on this one. So the more assets they have, the more data they have, the better. So for something like this, we can give them infinite options that we can also get hyper localized. We're talking about multinational, let's just talk like McDonald's, right? If all your photography assets are of white Americans and you're trying to advertise in India, it's probably not going to hit the same as if you could do it with someone who's local to the area, right? So something like that, where just having a simple change like that, instead of having to do a whole photo shoot, can be massive in terms of returns. And not even considering the language too, right? That you can utilize to be more hyper personalized and localized. Think about that even here in the US. Someone in New York is radically different than someone in Oklahoma. So just being able to change the language there too. Yeah. The interesting thing is that Midjourney is very powerful now and can understand this very well. We're using a couple different tools there to combine both elements, Midjourney and ChatGPT, to get those visual building blocks. But Essentially, you can create a whole branded library. And it's one thing to note there is that it's all based on the copyright. It's all essentially going to be utilized as stock photography anyway. Like anyone can use it now. That's the thing to know. If you create anything on Midjourney, it can't be copyrighted. If it's fully created with AI, you can't copyright it. So essentially, whatever
I
you put
guess you
out
have
there,
to sign it. If you
yeah.
sign it by hand, maybe then it's yours.
There's an interesting gray area with it, which of course I've done a number of these talks. I've been on stage. It's always a question, right? So I got to figure out where the loopholes are, where the gray areas. Allegedly, whatever you edit becomes copyrightable by human hand. So if I was to take this brand image in Photoshop from Midjourney into Photoshop, change the whole background dynamic and whatnot, whatever was changed by me, that's going to be copyrightable. So maybe the main subject, the person in the photo, isn't copyrightable, but the background is. It's so weird how it works. I don't know how they're gonna be able to keep up with this because it's just gonna move at lightning speed. But something to
Yeah,
note, people are thinking about it.
the speed thing is what interests me quite a bit in any area of AI is how quickly can you get to the desired output of what you're looking to do. I really like how Midjourney, I don't know when they introduced it, but the adding an image to it for reference and then building off of that, really fascinating. Can you talk a little bit about how you've explored using reference images with brands?
Totally. So like image prompting, it's probably the most underutilized aspect of Midjourney, I would say, because I don't see a lot of people doing it across the landscape, especially those who are sharing their prompts. It's just it to me, it's the same idea as if you're utilizing ChatGPT and instead of giving it any sort of data or context, you just say, write me an email. And like when you say that and it comes out, this is going to be a game changer, like the same like generic language that it pulls from, because it's pulling from what 1.8 trillion data points or something like that. So you're getting everything mixed in there. So same idea as if instead you were to give it a whole bunch of data and context and say, write an email off of this data. Oftentimes it comes out a lot better, right? Like just way more clear, way more direct to the point. Same theory applies with Midjourney. So if you're giving it a reference image, if you want an image in a certain style or a certain composition, it's way easier to give it that reference image and then generate off of it. Things that we've been doing that are interesting too is, again, because you get in the tool, start to recognize, the different ways to utilize it. Anyone's a designer. Most of the time, I feel like designers are super equipped for this because they've been playing surgeon or chef. I like to say the entire progression of this. Oftentimes designers, you're clipping things from here and there. You're putting like a whole collage together to make something like cohesive. So same theory applies again, where you're the chef, you have a bunch of ingredients, you're trying to make a meal. So long way of saying when I'm doing something like a pattern based, like maybe there's some patterns that are really, really intricate to a brand or certain textures or things like that. I'll generate that texture in Midjourney standalone, and then I'll have some lifestyle image that I can add it to. For example, let's say we're working on a textile or something, and you want to show it as a blanket on a couch. You want to create a lifestyle image with that. So you can generate that pattern standalone, which I think is the easiest way to do it, and then image prompt it into like a lifestyle looking photo where it's like some comfy looking couch in like a rustic environment. And that pattern will translate so much better because you use that as the reference image onto the lifestyle image instead of trying to go through this entire prompt and really define the pattern of the blanket in the prompt itself. It's really hard to get all the details out of Midjourney. So I'm hoping the example makes sense, easier to visualize it, but really we're just taking certain things, especially if you have, so maybe you're looking at maybe you want to put like a brand color or aesthetic or look and feel on some concrete because you're trying to create a background for an image. Right? Like that stuff is where I think it's super underutilized. Like I said before, I think everyone's looking for a finished product. But again, this can just be a piece of the mix. Creating like a gradient colored background. Let's just say it's like a neon gradient, but you want it on concrete overlay. To do that in Photoshop, to go get like a gradient, to generate the gradient, then source some sort of concrete background, superimpose it on top of each other, mix and match. Like that could take 30 minutes to an hour. Now you can generate the gradient. You can generate that little concrete texture. Then you can blend them together. Now you have a background to throw some text on. It can be a website asset. It can be a social post. It can be anything. So it's like taking the intricate pieces of what you'd be doing and just doing them faster in the tools. If that makes sense, though, it might have been a little complicated.
No, it totally makes sense. I'm curious, what have you had a chance to explore with creation at scale? Everyone thinks, yeah, it's great that I can do one, but what I need is 1,000. Whether they really need
Yeah.
1,000 or not, it's arguable. But what has your experience been like with getting volume out of these tools in a
So
reasonable way?
yeah, I think it goes back to manufacturing your output, right, of what you're
Mm.
looking for. We've done this in the ad space, right? So again, something as simple as I need 500 ads for the next month that I'm going to run. Now, there's ways to do it that aren't just that aren't just generate individual asset over and over and over and over again. So simple tools, we can stack tools like Midjourney, ChatGPT, and a tool like Figma, and we can generate infinite variations from that. So if you think about, let's just say we're doing ads for multiple mediums. We're doing Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Google, display ads, things like that. Maybe we need 7 or 8 different aspect ratios to get that done. We can generate 5 images in Midjourney. We can generate 5 different sets of copy and 5 different CTAs maybe on all those with the 8 aspect ratios. Then we'll use tools like Figma, where we just essentially structure the template in there, all with placeholders. Here's where the image goes. Here's where the copy goes. Here's where the CTA goes. And then we link them with a plugin in Figma called CopyDoc. So essentially we can put those 5 different images, 5 different call to action, 5 different copy pieces, and 7 or 8 different aspect ratios. Link them with a spreadsheet, and that'll just auto populate in Figma. So you times those all together, and you're looking at image 1, copy 1, CTA 1 with image 1, copy 1, CTA 2, image 1, copy 1, same over and over again. So we've been able to produce that in volume. So it's just
That's
ways to
great.
find the tools to link them. Yeah, that doesn't have to be like that process doesn't have to be for you creating everything with AI either. That can be, I have this one winning ad. I want to make 50 variations. We can do it that way. That can be, you have some winning copy. You want to try it with different images. You can do it this way. Winning images, you want to try different copies. Same theory applies. So it's, again, just stringing the tools together to manufacture the outcome. But something like that can be done in mass. So that doesn't have to be 1,000. That could be 10,000 variations. That can be 200 variations. It just depends on what you need, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I came across, I don't know how long they've had the tool, but Canva also has a data bulk upload for text and images as well. So you can get variable data out of your Canva assets, which is amazing now that you can export downloadable CSVs from ChatGPT. There's no reason why you can't preload your social media with a bunch of different assets that you create. Yeah, really interesting to see how people are using the tools together, right? I feel like isolated, they're powerful, but when you start linking 1 or 2, 3 tools together, ChatGPT plus 1 is great, but you probably need 3, some kind of connective glue, maybe a little API or Zapier or something. But that's where it really, I think, starts to become superpowers, right? You may not even ever need to link so many tools together, but it's starting to see how. What do you think for someone who's never used some of these tools? I know Midjourney, when you're using it through Discord, can feel a little, if you're non-technical, it's like,
Yeah.
why am I in a chat server that it can be, it's not the friendliest entry for someone who just wants to experiment with image generation. Have you used Dolly within ChatGPT, and what kind of experience have you had? Because I know it's also been updated.
Yeah, I think if I had any recommendation for anyone, it would be to start with ChatGPT in general. That's just that tool, because it has so much power and capability behind it. It helps you understand the other tools. For example, learning ChatGPT made me better in Midjourney because I understood that the tool is extremely literal, right? You tell it what to do, it does it. It doesn't fill in the blanks for you, essentially. So if you tell it you want to write an email with 300 300 words and you want it to sound exciting, right? That's what it's going to do. It's not going to build you some other email that it's very literal to what you say, which is the same thing as Midjourney. So if you tell Midjourney to have a dog in the woods at sunset, that's what it's going to give you. But if you just write a dog in the woods, you're not going to get, it's just going to do whatever the hell it wants. So you're being very literal with it. It is there to listen to instruction. But Dolly, I use ChatGPT and Dolly for different things than I utilize for Midjourney, right? Because I've used them both for consistently. Like Dolly, if I need something to be super coherent and maybe more artistic or art focused versus like photographic in general, I'll use Dolly because the coherence, what that means is just it listens to your prompt better, is better in Dolly. It just whatever you say, it does, which I think is super useful for whatever you're looking to do in there. Midjourney, again, the wow factor is significant in comparison to Dolly. That's my opinion. But it's also sometimes it won't hit on every single thing you put in the prompt. So you sacrifice a little quality for consistency with Dolly and you get, a little bit more firepower with Midjourney. But I would say my experience on ChatGPT really helped everything else, helped me with every other AI platform because it's really super powerful. There's so much you can do. It's how creative can you get with it? I remember back when I started using it, it was the same thing that everyone does. Can you write me a social post? Can you write me an email? Can you write this sales presentation? Whatever. When I started getting, really interested with it was when I just plugged in, this was before you could even upload documents in there. I just copy pasted a CSV file, like the raw numbers, no, it was all numbers I pasted in there. I was like, can you format this into a table? And it was like, yes. And I'm like, can you analyze these numbers? And it was like, and I was like, holy crap, it can do analysis, which to me has been super helpful with everything. I use it more as a strategy and analysis partner than I do for a generation partner, if that makes sense. But it's, the utilizing that too is helpful with Dolly. That's where I'm going with this, is you can have your data set attached to it, ask it to build prompts for you based on your data set, and then really expand it from there. And you can also take that same prompt and run it through Midjourney too. So it's just knowing what you can do, like you just said before, linking the tools together and making them work in tandem. Because again, I utilize ChatGPT to write some of my Midjourney prompts because it's just really good at understanding what I want and how to do it. And also pull in different data points from searching the internet that could be useful to make everything easier. So it's the interface on Discord is tough, but the new website, by the way, I should mention that on Midjourney, that'll be launched, I'm assuming, in the next couple of weeks for everybody. I've had access to it now. It's really easy and it's much cleaner. So I think that's going to change for a lot of people once they get on there.
Great. That's exciting. I tend to agree with you with Dolly that I've used it successfully to create graphics. I feel like it's got a bit more line work capabilities. Whereas with Midjourney, there's a plugin I was using that's like the Midjourney plugin that for I think it's called photorealism. It gives you these great photorealistic outputs. But yeah, the putting images in is a really interesting thing to experiment with. And I would definitely suggest that people give that a try because there's so much information in image.
Especially on ChatGPT. Like if you want to, this is another quick tip for people who are looking to just build better prompts or honestly just learn how to prompt. Midjourney has a feature, it's called Describe, but ChatGPT, you can do the exact same thing. So really, if you were let's just say you really like a photo or you like your brand photo, maybe it's like a brand photo that you find really exceptional and you want to replicate it. If you upload it into ChatGPT and you ask it to describe it in meticulous detail, and then also let's just say it's a photograph, add specific technical data to your description, like what camera it is, lens type, maybe some aperture value or some ISO ranges, things like that. It'll pull it out. And then you can go run that in whatever imaging platform you're using. And it's typically going to come out really well. If you don't know how to, because I think probably the hardest thing to do when you're just starting is how do I describe the thing that I'm trying to, visualize? It's turning your visuals into text, which is hard. So sometimes you just need a little help.
I love that suggestion. So I guess you could use the word describe or reverse engineer this photo with a photorealistic Midjourney prompt. And that should do it. Maybe just starting off with you are a Midjourney photo describing expert. I love giving the tool the expert status, right?
Oh,
Putting
it's
it
the
in
best.
yeah.
The best thing
All of
for
my advisors have won PhDs and prizes for their intelligence when I prompt.
it works really well. And then ChatGPT told us that's how we should be prompting it recently when they came out with the prompt guides. But the thing I would say, if people are looking for photorealistic content or whatever medium it is, right? Let's just say it's maybe you want 3D graphics, something that's more sorry. Maybe you want some video game assets. Maybe you want photographic elements. The best way to do it is to go back to the basics. And what I mean is, if the way I learned how to prompt in a very photorealistic way on Midjourney was, this is before there was really any guides out there. I was just testing things. What kind of data is on a photo? What kind of data, or how would you describe a photo? How would you teach photography? It was like, okay, the main thing in photography, composition, there's lighting, there's different cameras and lenses and different elements like that. Same thing would apply to something like, let's say you wanted to create a mood board. What elements go into a mood board? It's like theme, aesthetic, color scheme, things like that. So breaking it down to what the actual like core of the medium that you're trying to get out of it is. If it's a video game, like what type of graphics card is it rendered on? Like what type of lighting composition, depth, things like that. All important, because once you break it down to that, then you just have to fill in the blanks. Then it's okay. Oh, I'm trying to create a dog in the woods, right? But I know I need a shot type, so let's do a close up. And it's a dog in the woods. Maybe what time of day is it? It's sunset, so we want to have this like golden hour backlighting. So then you start to really push the envelope into creating things that you want because you know what the medium is. So you're acting as like a creative director. But I don't think most people go about it that way. They're just trying to get something in the woods, rerun until they get something they like. So it's having a little structure in that sense can be really helpful.
100%. I think that right now there's so much opportunity to create images on your own brand that you can put much more thought into this now. I think gone are the image directories of the past where you're looking for a particular shot. It's now going into your imagination, or maybe you're just looking for inspiration from other places, getting reference images. You can include things like the hex values of your brand, which is really cool. So there's lots of different ways to put it all together, but being consistent with it, trying to come up with ways that this output is going to be consistent moving forward. Because probably as you explore these tools and these images, you're going to find new things that you can consistently do now that you couldn't before. So maybe your images start to look better, but they're going to continue to maintain that same aesthetic moving forward, which is something that, we couldn't even do a few months ago. It just keeps improving. Curious in what you're doing this year. Tell me a bit of your focus as it relates to your business.
Yeah, so it's evolving for me. I'll be completely candid there. I'm just launching probably about 2 to 3 weeks ago. When I basically launched the business on stage, so that was a little bit nerve-wracking for myself. But we're doing a number of things. So the goal here is typically what I've been doing in the background for the past couple of months. I've been doing private training on the tools. So I've been doing a lot of private training on Midjourney, individuals, designers, things like that, to just get their skills up. Really, where my focus has been over the last couple of months has been corporate training. So going into businesses, basically teaching them how to use the tools, but also working on individual projects to help them leverage and see the tangible difference in where those projects can be with or without AI. Yeah, we've been doing, my focus again is we also have a done for you offering where we're doing things. We're really focusing right now in the paid media space, where again, if you need to have 1,000 ads done for you, that's when you come to us. If you want to mimic your brand and things of that nature, do it in a quicker fashion. We've been able to cut production time by 60 to 80% in most cases on that. So time saver, cost saver, really. And then ultimately what I'm looking to build in 2024 is a community, online community, where we can have a bunch of really high-class marketers come in and talk to people and just have an open discussion on everything that's developing and try to keep everything siphoned, and how really people can start to use these things and push it forward, because it's really going to be, I don't know how people are operating without it anymore, to be honest. Like I really don't know, because it sounds like such a jerk of me to say this, but you're just behind. You really, like, it just, I don't know how you can operate at the same level as the people that are using it to get things out the door or just to be more creative with it. So there's just even things like Fireflies, right? Like that tool, not to go off track here, but I don't know how I could live without that tool anymore. It's my personal note taker. I don't know what I would do without it. I can't take notes on calls. That was like the best thing that had ever been introduced to my life for probably like the last 10 years. So I
I,
just
t-
think it's
I
going to be everything's going to be moving.
I tend to agree with you. There's certain things that as subscriptions come up, it's am I using that? Yeah, every single call. I like it's and ChatGPT is the same way. Like I am
Mhm.
constantly using it, and to imagine running a business without it now, it's almost like if the internet stopped working, it's like how do I even function anymore? But yeah, the productivity gains that you can experience are tremendous, and it's why I'm leaning into OpenAI training because I just feel like if I can help my friends do better in business and we can all rise up together, there's going to be a window that there is a huge information disparity, right? I've spent a bunch of
Definitely.
time living in Florida recently where my dad lives, and they're not going to be applying Chat GPT there very soon. But there's a ton of services that are coming up that are going to be able to support people that aren't using the tool themselves. I'd encourage anyone to get their hands dirty, right? Use these tools creatively at first for whatever you can do, but it should be remove your or move take your phone and move the chat gpt to that bottom four dock or however many icons you have and make it something that you click every day and ask a question to, whereas you may normally google it. I've
100%.
replaced googling quite a bit now for with prompts. Is that the same for you?
100%. I don't remember the last time I asked Google anything. Because also, like with the data too, like, this sounds crazy. I'm just like, I got some lab work back from the doctor, and I was like, can you cross-reference this with certain different items on the internet to give me a like real detailed analysis on what these lab numbers mean? You can't Google for that stuff. You can go read a really long article, but now something like that, you can take it a little bit of a step further. It's like interacting with Google search, which I love. And it's replaced a lot of things for me. I would say even creating like simple marketing content and ideas. That used to be you go search on, you go search, you save things, and you just go pull from your own inspiration, things like that. It's helping a client a couple of weeks ago. They had a competitor on Amazon. They're like, I don't know what to talk about anymore. I've just said the same thing over and over again. Go to your competitor's Amazon, go to all the 1-star reviews, screenshot it, feed it through ChatGPT, ask it like what questions and what concerns come up most consistently, and then just talk on the other side of it. So if it's sizing is always bad or this doesn't fit right or whatnot, I'm like, go make all of your marketing messaging about that. It's little things you can do with it that really can help. Even from that, like I said, I'm always just, how can I cut 70, 80% of the work down? Or at least give me a starting point, because I feel like that's the hardest. Just getting started with something, just to get it to that point, and then you can take over, the human can take over the rest. And that's where I still think there's that big misconception of just AI is going to do start to finish everything you need to do. You push send and it goes. But it's really, it'll get you there. You got to push it over the top.
Yeah, I love this 595 rule where you come in for that first 5% and you set it up and then you let AI do the heavy lifting and you come
Mhm.
back at that last 5% to just make sure that it went the way you thought it would. Um,
Exactly. It's perfect. I think it's
yeah,
the other thing too is interesting is because ChatGPT is so open ended, right? I don't even know what other way to describe it. You can do so much with it. You know, even things like what we've started to string together, like using these common tools because it just made like so, again to solve common problems. To me, I always look at everything now as can ChatGPT solve this problem? Probably. It's just how do I get there? Like
exactly.
Fireflies, for example, like in the agency setting, what's something we do all the time? We have calls. We just have calls with our clients. We have a ton of them. And typically, one of our biggest problems was when someone would go out on vacation or someone would go out sick, they'd have to jump, another account manager would have to jump in with a client to take over. But oftentimes they're left reading really subpar notes and like context of where everything's at. So it's just unproductive calls and unproductive work getting done. So we were able to take tools like Fireflies, got everyone on that, every call is recorded, every word's recorded. With Fireflies, it breaks down the action items, it breaks down the questions that were asked, it breaks down, the tonality report in there. So we would zap that into ChatGPT, synthesize the data down, and then zap that into our CRM. So now we had a full context picture for everyone, for every client. So it was so much easier, again, for someone to pick up the ball and run with it when they needed it. But also we had a full streaming data set that wasn't necessarily subjective based on note taking. And maybe people missed something. Maybe it's, oh, I forgot about this date of when you're going to launch your next promotion. But I have to go back and re-listen to the call for 30 minutes to find where it was. These little things, they just help so much. And again, not to go down the rabbit hole, but it's a lot, it's open-ended. It's like building a Lego set. You can keep going.
That's what I find so exciting about it, is that no two people are going to use the tool the same.
Yeah.
Because we all have different backgrounds. Like, if I studied programming and I can understand Python, that unlocks a huge world of ChatGPT that isn't accessible to, say, someone who doesn't have a bit of the developer chops. Not to say that if you just ask ChatGPT to learn Python, you couldn't do that, right? So I also see the huge opportunity for learn whatever you want to learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have the ultimate learning tool. I'm curious to get into a little bit of GPTs and their power and how you've experimented with building some of your own and stuff that you've liked in that process.
It's so much fun. Like I feel like I have a propensity with these AI tools now that it's been like, I've done the same thing over and over again, where it's just, I get to the tool and I'm like, how far can I push this damn thing? Like, how far will it go before it breaks or doesn't understand me? So I was building like these before the GPTs, I was building prompting tools in each window every time. So I would like, if I want to do a certain type of prompt, right, where I had basically built it at a couple months ago, to, if I would just give it a subject and an environment, it would apply all the other different, like I had trained it on compositions and camera types and things like that to get my desired prompt to make it more creative. But it would also output it in 3 different versions for me, like a short, medium, long form, and also start to give me style settings based on what I was looking for. So it was very intuitive, but I had to build, it was like a 25-minute process to get it there every single time. Now with the GPTs, that's one thing that I've done. Like, the first thing I did as soon as that came out, I was like, all right, let me just reformat this for this one. Now I can do this without having to redo it in every single window.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, like, when I'm doing some work on podcasts, or I'm doing some work on live events, or I'm speaking or webinars or whatnot, I want to, for my own content, I want to repurpose it. So I've built, something that can transcribe, or something that can take transcriptions and then break it down based on post formats that I've utilized a number of times that have been highly tested and work. And then also feed it the data on my most popular type of language in terms of what works the most and what typically resonates with the audience. So I can just drop a podcast in there and I get 10 posts. And it all works based on previous data that's worked for me in the past. So I've built things like that. Again, things that you find yourself doing over and over again on the tool. So let me systematize it. That's been really helpful. I do build things for fun. I build things for fun based on, like, when I travel, I've built walking and tour guides for myself with the GPTs. So I'll basically train it on anything that's any Anthony Bourdain data that I can get.
Nice.
So I'll typically write the area that I'm traveling to, what type of budget I'm looking for. So I'll have it spit out like a walking tour for me based on food and wine, which is what I want. And it's, again, I'm looking for certain criteria. I don't want a 3 Michelin star place. I want maybe restaurants that are just missed a Michelin star, but are really cool, more local, suggest their like most popular dishes, what wine to pair it with. So sometimes I just run that through and cross-reference the data. It's funny to come across these places when you're traveling. It's, oh, ChatGPT told me to eat there. And you go in and it's legit. Thanks, ChatGPT. So you take it and blend it, business life, personal life. That's what I mean. It's too open-ended. It's too open-ended. It never ends.
And I think that's part of the challenge with it being so simple that it's not quite understood what it can do. You give it a couple prompts, oh, it can build me a recipe, it can give me a to-do list. A lot of people don't even know that you can get tables out of it. and CSV files and input images into it. And so there's, you know, I would say that 99% of people are only scratching the surface, those that have logged in to use it. And if you haven't done, it's Mr. Beast, do 100. Your first prompt is going to suck. And then each prompt improves something about it. And there's no, I think anyone who's gotten good at it has gotten good partially by accident and just brute force usage. And then through usage comes, oh, it is very much a playful way that you can, you can go through YouTube and find a bunch of tutorials and things like that. But it really is, if you want to position yourself, I think, for success in the immediate future, at least ChatGPT is a great place to spend some free time, right?
Definitely. By far. I say this a lot. I have a lot of analogies, if you can't tell. As I'm trying to break this down digestibly to people. But it's when you're prompting, it's hard to start because you don't know exactly how the tool works. But once you've used it for a ton of time, you know how the tool works. But I typically tend to say, talk to it like you're talking to a junior employee, right? If you're going to tell your coordinator to go write a social media content calendar, and you just say, go write a social media content calendar, like, how do you think it's going to come back? It's going to come back all over the place, not concise, not in any sort of way that you want it. But if you say, okay, you want to go do a social media content calendar, let's make it for 3 posts a week. We're going to talk to this specific audience. We want to have a mixture of images, videos, and text posts. And our goal is to generate sales from that. So you give them the parameters, that's going to come back way cleaner than when you just give it these very vague instructions. So be a good manager, essentially, right? That really helps, and have some structure. If you look at a lot of these mega prompt structures or like these typical prompting structures, they work. It's fill in the blanks. It makes it a lot easier to get even just a desired close enough output to then iterate off of. That's just to start, right? I think that's really, I don't know if you started that way, but when I started doing the more of the mega prompting or whatever you want to call it, started to get much better results. But then that really taught me how the tool works, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think there's anytime you can get some reference prompts to look under the hood. I know when I first started using the Midjourney photorealism tool or plugin, it showed what a great photorealistic plugin looks like. And you're looking at things like the aperture speed, the camera, and you're like, oh, I had no idea that these variables are included to make a great prompt. And now I personally would never write manually a prompt that is about a paragraph long with all these technical specifications, but that if you want that kind of good quality output, that this is what it's going to look like, right?
Yeah, 100%. Have you ever asked ChatGPT to, like, when you're going through, maybe working through something with it without really knowing how to prompt it? I've done some various projects where I'm like, I don't even know how to prompt this thing. But you get to the end of it and you're like, how would you prompt yourself to do this whole process again? Then it gives you the exact prompt that you'd want to utilize, open another chat window, plug it in. It's, oh, that can work. So you can ask it to help. That's what it's there for.
I have used it quite a bit to interview me to get what it needs.
Interesting.
Ask me all the questions you need to come up with a photorealistic prompt for X or whatever. Then it might only need 5 or 6 questions, maybe less, to get to what it wants. And then it'll give you the output. Interview me is also a great strategy to incorporate into, if you're doing any creative writing, or to give it some reference or stories from you personally. Interview me to get a better output of whatever this is. That can be very useful. And also,
the most important thing that you said, not to cut you off there, I apologize. Just ask me questions. So I typically put at the end, because like going back to the literal point, whatever you put in there, it's what it's going to do. But if you missed some context, it's not going to tell you that you missed some context. That's a really important point. I think that you just hit on. Like, that to me has made me a lot better at the tool, is just doing that one little phrase, or interview me, same sort of style. So again, I apologize for cutting you up. I really think that was a massive piece of advice.
One of the ways I'm using GPTs as well is to shortcut YouTube video learning. I'm using Ecamm which is this tool that makes it look great. But there's all these like hour-long videos from Ecamm explaining how to do it. So I've got a ChatGPT Chrome extension that gives me a quick copy paste transcript. And then I'll put that in a ChatGPT, usually as a PDF in a GPT. And then now I have this tutorial that I can query on, give me a summary of it. That's usually something that's easy to get. But I can then start asking me, okay, I'm studying to pass a mini test. Ask me questions about this to check if I know. And what's great is multiple choice questions.
Oh,
But yeah,
didn't even think of that.
anything you want to learn, you can turn it into a quizzing tool for you.
It's interesting because there's so many things that you can do like on that level too, just from an educational perspective. When you put it like that, I didn't even think to ask multiple choice questions, normally just regular open-ended questions. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I think that is a huge underutilized part of the tool is help me learn whatever I'm interested in. Along with PDF tube transcripts, what's great is books. If you can get a copy of a book that you're reading as a PDF, and then having it help you learn the material by quizzing you. And then if you're on that same thread, you can have a track record of your quizzing. Ask me the same questions from 2 weeks ago. So there's really a ton of power in that.
Do you use it for analytics at all?
More and more, now that with the CSV output, there's some tools. I was using one plugin called Chat with Your Data. It allows you to, have you tried that one?
I haven't tried that one, but I've built GPTs for in a similar fashion. But now I'm gonna have to go try that one because there's so many plugins now. It used to be there was like 10. Now it's
So
like 150.
in the plugin store, there's 3 or 4 that talk to Google Sheets.
Okay.
I don't even think I've tried them all. I remember using Chat with Your Data when it first came out. And effectively, you can have a series of prompts right in Sheets. So if you drag down, it will auto-complete those cells with that prompt.
Okay.
But
that is a game changer, I
but
think,
if
for a lot of people.
yeah, it's cool, but what you got to realize is if you drag down 50 cells, that it's going to be doing that 50 times. You got to watch your API costs if you do decide to do a mass variable input for that, but super powerful. One thing that I found really useful too is when I'll ask for a CSV of some information from ChatGPT, I'll ask for it to preview in a table. So before downloading it and opening it up, it gives a little shorthand there. But yeah, I'm more and more curious about how people are using it for analytics and to decision making. I love asking for a quick SWOT analysis for any idea I have to just get a different opinion about something that I might be super excited about. Oh, I didn't consider the weaknesses as you've described them.
Yeah, it's the best, man. That's honestly, I probably use it more so, maybe 80%, 70% now for just analysis and strategy because it's really good at getting us up to the next level. For example, my whole content sales strategy has come around ChatGPT because I was selling products on Gumroad and it's really just putting stuff up there to have it live somewhere. Digital products, just the information that I put out in a nice condensed fashion. But I was just like, can this take my sales data and solve for a variable that I can't do myself? Which I'm like, can you help me with, here's all my data for the last 6 months, which I'm not recommending big businesses do this. This is just me. And it's not like my data's like, I'm not putting out billions of dollars. It's very small in comparison, but it's like my AOV, I really want to solve for my average order value increase. I also want to look at how I can increase LTV around these numbers. So to give you like a really thorough analysis on everything that's going on here, what you're recognizing, how often do people purchase, how consistently do they repurchase, and what does that time frame look like to get those types of numbers. And then it was like, from understanding all this, how would you increase your LTV or how would you increase your AOV? Gave me like 10 strategies. I put them all into place and it worked. And I was like, this is so crazy that this robot just told me how to make more money just from my data and it works. So things like that things like taking my social posts and really breaking them down into granular fashion. Here's my top 25, just copy paste all of them into some sort of document, have it read it. Be like, can you break this down into a templatized format? Maybe 3 or 4 different post structures. Again, like how can I understand what the ideal post length is? How to write my hooks, what type of cover images work, things like that. So I can just be more streamlined with it. It gives me, and again, it's objective, which is what I love about it. It's not my opinion on why I work. It's just like the data's opinion on why I work. So I can take that or leave it. I don't have to do it, but it's just, this is what the data says. And then there's my own sort of creative opinion on it. So I love having that different part of me because I tend to think that whatever the data says, do the opposite. I've always had that mindset, which is so weird. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. Because I just think in marketing, when everyone gets data, they just do the same thing and then everything becomes burnt out. So if you're doing something that's totally opposite of that, for example, there's a guy that preaches ugly ads, which I think is the most genius idea of all time, which is not the perfectly curated, like highly stylized, perfect photography image. It's someone's face up on close on the camera and just like a weird angle because it stops your scroll because you haven't seen that today. So I like having both sides of the coin there. So it balances me out on here's the objective side, here's what you think is going to work, and then meeting it in the middle. So it's the analysis point of it to me has been really the biggest help in my professional life, I think. I don't know what else, that and fireflies, but
I would tend to agree with you that when you can make better decisions repeatedly, that should drive your business in the right direction, right? I definitely believe in the garbage in, garbage out with AI. So if you're constantly making better decisions because you're asking the right questions, then you should have your best year ever. And that should be built off of your next best year. Ultimately, we're in charge of the direction we take it. So your goals have to be super clear. You got to know why you're doing this in the beginning. I jokingly tell people I've just tried to play more guitar.
Yeah.
And all of this is around, all right, if you want to play more guitar, you probably need to have some businesses that don't require a ton of your time. Okay, what options are there for that? And prompting into that for me, it's time for guitar. For someone else, it might be time with their kids, but we can all agree a little bit of extra time to do what we enjoy isn't a bad thing.
Definitely not. But I also think it's been good for some of the best thinkers in the world, some of the best business people that I've studied. Everyone reverse engineers things, right? They reverse engineer it. They manufacture their outcome. This is having access to this tool, I feel like has shifted a lot of psychology into like, how do I get to what I want? Which is, I don't know if a lot of people think like that. Just coming out of the standard, and maybe I'm saying this as an ignorant, naive person.
That's okay.
I personally didn't think about if I want to make X amount of money per year, how much money do I have to make per month? How much money do I have to make per week? What does that look like from a time perspective? How can I like do revenue generating activities that will get me to that point? Yeah, I think a lot of people are thinking maybe the other way of like, how do I build this to get to that certain point versus breaking it down very practically. But to me, the tools that you're using now with AI, you have to start with that process in mind to get to that manufactured outcome. So can't just be when you don't know what we've probably all been here, right? When you're prompting ChatGPT and you don't really know what you're trying to get out of it, you just want to like work through the problem, but it's so much more vague when you start. And it's, I don't know how to write this prompt. It doesn't really make sense. Maybe I'll just work through it and get to where I want to go versus like when you have a defined end goal. I want an email that's going to be 350 words. The subject line is going to be X, Y, Z, blah, 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 blah. You get that flow becomes way easier to get that endpoint because you know exactly what the endpoint is. So I'm word salading on that, but I think it's really shifted a little bit of psychology in terms of like how to get to the end results, which is probably good for a lot of people in business.
For sure. There's that work that people do around figuring out why they're in business and their vision for what they're building is just as essential as it was before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're not clear about that, who cares about what the tool does, right? Like it means nothing. But once that, like you said, you can reverse engineer where you're going, I think ChatGPT comes to this incredible business partner that has no equity in what you're building. it's unbelievable. And I just want to thank you so much for your time. I know this conversation went all over the place today, but I love
It's awesome.
the energy and enthusiasm you bring to it, and looking forward to following your journey throughout this year and seeing all the great stuff you share. And I got a lot out of this call. So thanks so much for sharing. And I hope our listeners did as well.
Yeah, Mark, I appreciate you having me on. This was fun.